Hi, everyone. This is Krista Moore, and welcome to the Krista Moore Show. This show is brought to you as my way of being able to share others' stories of purpose and passion. And I'm really excited today to be able to share the stories behind the passion in the newly released book that my friend, Rufus Stevens, and his daughter, Connie Johnson, have recently released. So I'm excited to hear the backstories and also get a really good understanding of why they've written this book. And I think you'll learn the impact that their passion can have on the world. So I'm excited to introduce them to you. So here's Butch and here is Connie. And I just wanted you both to say hello to our audience today.
Hi, how are you? Glad to be here, Krista. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Krista, so much for having us on. We're super excited about our book.
Yeah, so the book title, I have it right here, Leave a Mark. First, I really would like to understand a little bit about daddy-daughter books. I mean, we're a daddy-daughter combination here, and I love that. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that? Let me just also say something. I call Rufus Butch because that was his 10-year-old name, and that's just how I know him. So if I say Rufus or Butch, it's the same person. So, okay, Butch, why don't you go ahead and start? Tell us a little bit about daddy-daughter books and how that got started.
Well, Krista, I'm a motivational speaker, and so I talk to our kids often. And Connie and I were on the phone, and she was probably my number one cheerleader when I was speaking. And I got to thinking about my next speech, me being leave a mark, living life intentionally. And, at the end of the day, somebody knows that you were there. And she said something about, boy, that would be a great book. Because we talked about developing a keynote for educators. And then we started talking about a book. And then it occurred to me that would be a great book, but I wouldn't think of writing a book about education without Connie. Connie is a 16-year veteran. And so we decided fairly quickly, and I drafted an outline, and it just took off. And we would meet and strategize and cut and paste and say, this sounds good, that one not so much. And it just kind of evolved. It morphed into what you see today. And it's gotten us both very excited.
Well, I want to just say congratulations for sure. And Connie, as I was reading it, one thing that I really appreciated about it was your experience, your education as an educator, but also a counselor. And then I know your father, so then to have his, wisdom and ministry kind of, married into that, it was one voice, a daddy-daughter voice, but it was clearly distinct on who was writing what chapter. And I just appreciated all of that. And as the reader, I just thought you guys did a great job. And it is just chocked full with wonderful things. So tell us your kind of side of the whole daddy-daughter books and what are your thoughts?
When I think about daddy-daughter books, when we were growing up, my sister and I, my dad would take us on daddy-daughter dates. And so we would always call them daddy-daughter dates and things like that. And so early on in the pandemic, it was right after spring break. I was a bit harried. I was thankful for the break. Didn't think we wouldn't be going back to school, but was thankful for the break anyway. And I was talking with him and I was just kind of like, I'm going to be 40 soon and what is this and that, all these different things. And he was just being himself, which is the encourager. I say he's put on this planet to encourage people, and I'm just one of those beneficiaries. But he was just encouraging me, and I had like a comeback for everything that he was saying. And then he talked about, and then we should write the book with Leave a Mark. And I was like, you can write the book. Like, I don't know that I'm ready for that. So I kind of pushed back on that and I procrastinated. But like you said, once we really started going and once I wrote the first chapter that I was going to write, then it was just full speed ahead. So later when we thought, well, what company name will we put behind leave a mark. We thought, well, daddy daughter, like that's what we do.
It has to be. Yeah, that's a no-brainer,
where
right?
it came from.
As I was reading it, one of the first things that really resonated with me, and it was almost like a head slap for me. You know, I'm reading it, and there was this point in the book where it took the teachers and who they are as individuals and really put them high on the pedestal that they should be. And it made me realize, oh my gosh, like how important. And we all can name that one teacher, right? That has had an amazing influence on who we are today. And then I started thinking how all teachers need to read this book as a reminder and as a refresher. So it was very powerful for me as a parent, as a mother of a school teacher, as the granddaughter of a first grade school teacher. I mean, but I think it's not just for teachers to read. It's for parents and any educators or really anyone. The principles in here apply.
Yeah.
Was that intentional?
I would say yes, because right now I'm raising teenagers, and I think I even speak to their somewhat pushback of my parenting style as they begin to have their own ideas and thoughts. So I always think that good teachers are like, I would say like a mama, because I'm the mama, but like good parents. They want you to succeed. They want to champion you, but they also want to hold you accountable. And so, yes, I see such a parallel between parenting and teachers. And while it is totally a hats off to educators and all the difficult things that we do, I think that it's applicable to parents as well, that teach and parents that don't.
Sure. And we all can learn from that, right? In terms of what kind of mark are we leaving as parents? And gosh, if you picked up these 8 ways to leave a positive impression or a positive mark, they apply so much to parenting. You know, I was curious too about the timeliness of this with COVID and just how things have changed for teachers and what they've gone through in the past 18 months. What are your thoughts on that, Rufus?
Well, you know what? We started writing this and thought we would be further down the stream writing it, and so I'm gonna assign the timeliness to Providence.
Okay.
Because we were back and forth. We had with our editor and doing rewrites and that kind of thing, and it just flowed out when it was supposed to. I wish I could tell you Connie and I were really just shrewd marketers and authors, and that we just knew how to do this thing, but this was Providence.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, what I'd like to do is dive into, if you are willing to really share with everyone these 8 ways. And I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but I'd like to touch upon each of them, perhaps what they are, and then maybe why that made kind of the top 8 for a moment. Why don't you start? Go ahead and start, Connie. What would you say was one of your favorite?
Can I give you 2?
Absolutely.
I have a top 2.
Okay.
The first one is visibility, partially because it was the first mark that I wrote about. And you kind of, as you're writing it, you have something in mind, and sometimes it just kind of takes a twist. But I think that that's so important because it's kind of impossible for us to leave marks if we don't really see our students as individuals. So that's definitely why that made the top 8. And then the other one would be belonging, because I feel like all of us desire to belong and all of us desire to be seen. So they kind of go hand in hand in that way. And I know I talked about middle school being one of those really difficult times to belong.
Yeah, the visibility one for me, as I'm reading it, I'm thinking that how busy teachers could be day to day, and they might be focused more on, meeting the grade requirements or things that, aren't necessarily one-on-one with their students. And the visibility one, I think might not come easy for them to be thinking about every child in the room, especially if it's a large classroom, on visibility. What kind of tips would you give?
I think taking those every opportunity. So maybe I don't get to have a one-on-one conversation with all 22 of my students, but today I see that Jim is not himself, and because we've fostered a relationship over time, I'm able to check in with him today and maybe Sally tomorrow. And so just seizing those opportunities, but not seeing it as a, oh my gosh, I have to check in with each kid every single day.
Mm-hmm.
That becomes overwhelming, I would think.
Well, and on the belonging one, that's just kind of one of those Maslow theories of life, right? We all have that sense of belonging. But I'm also thinking that if students, and especially middle schoolers, or maybe not even just middle schoolers, all through, if they don't have that sense of belonging at home, they're really seeking that out in the school system. What are your thoughts on that, Butch?
You know what? It was not that particular chapter was written by Connie, but so much of it resonated with me because I personally had situations in school where I simply didn't feel like I belonged. I think it's a willful thing that the teachers have to do to focus on making students feel like they belong. I forgot the steps right offhand that Connie gave for making that, for activating that whole idea. But clearly it's something that has to happen if success is to happen in the classroom.
Yeah. What would you say are some of your favorites, Rufus? One or two of your chapters?
Well, the first one was one that I wrote in, and it's because it affected me, and I guess that's why I call it my favorite. It was the painful marks. It was a negative set of marks, one negative mark of all of the 8. But it's so critical, where teachers sometimes intentionally left damaging marks, and sometimes inadvertently. They were just tired, just feel like being bothered.
And you gave some real stories, some real examples of how this whole concept of painful marks and what an impression it had on you. Here you are at your age, remembering those particular incidents, right? And so we know it had a mark, we know it left a mark, but it was a painful one. Likely we've all had something like this and we've learned from it. But what I gained from that chapter, which was really interesting, is that we have as a teacher, as a parent, we have these choices every day.
Right.
Do we want to leave a painful mark, or do we want to leave, the right positive impression?
And the irony of it is that decision is a pretty narrow one. You don't have to make leaps to decide whether to leave a painful mark or a positive mark. If you just would not leave a painful mark, that I would call that progress.
Yeah.
That child doesn't get hurt that day. I imagine, I talk about it in the book in 9th grade. And the teacher tells me in a full classroom of kids, she says, Stevens, here's your paper. You got a D-. I wanted to give you an F. Mm-hmm. What is that? I'm 73 and I'm still talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's and I mean, she if she simply just given me my paper, we wouldn't be talking about that today.
Right.
Yeah.
Connie, one of the things that I talk a lot about and really believe in is this, and your dad might have mentioned this to you at some point, is something called your 10-year-old self. Mm-hmm. And it's what I believe is that at that innocent age of 10, using it metaphorically, is where purpose and passion meet. Mm-hmm. That's who we are before the world kind of tells us who we need to be. And this is just my philosophy, and I've interviewed a lot of people on this topic, and I actually am writing my second book called Your 10-Year-Old Self. And as a school teacher, I would imagine that you've seen kind of these children at this young, innocent age that are so moldable and realize, what an impact you can have as their teacher. And I'm just wondering if you kind of understand what I mean by that 10-year-old self, and how important it is as a teacher to see them as individuals.
Oh, absolutely. I taught 5th grade. I also taught 4th grade. So the second half of the year, they're 10. And then in 5th grade, they're 10.
4th and 5th grade.
In an elementary school, they're the big dogs on campus. They don't seem as innocent because they're the big kids. But they are just a great group of kids to be able to talk to, because they can talk back to you. Like you said, they're in that freedom of just being able to take risks and wanting to dream big, but they're also capable to see their giftings and maybe some things that they're not so good at, and be able to dream for who they want to be. So absolutely.
Yeah. And Butch, I was reading your chapter, I think it was, on one of the 8 ways, which was empowerment or empowering.
Mm-hmm.
And in that chapter, you spoke to this about identifying these gifts and bringing it out for them or showing it to them.
Absolutely. And it's I think Connie alluded to it earlier, and talking about just paying attention in the classroom. Just, kids are, it's interesting how you look at 3 kids and you see 3 sets of gifts. The problem, as I see it, is that the kids like us, we live too close to our gifting, and we miss it. We see it every day. We do that every day. I talk like that every day. I write like that every day, except that that's a gift. And it's something that will take you somewhere. And when a teacher takes the time to focus in on that kid and let that kid know the effect of that, what that gift can do, I think I had a story about Althea Ford and telling her story about writing and speaking. And I can tell you today, she's an incredible speaker and writer. But I doubt if it would have happened if that teacher hadn't taken the time to empower her.
That's right. Actually, I have a story to share on that. And as I was talking about, this innocent age of 10, I have lots of 10-year-old stories, but this one is a 18-year-old story. I went to college for special education because that's what my parents thought that I would like to do, is to be a teacher, because my grandmother was, and I used to be a camp counselor at a summer camp for special needs, and they thought, oh, special education. So it's kind of like they were telling me who I needed to be. And then I went to Clarion University only because that's where my cousin went. I'm like, okay, that's where I'm supposed to go. But I remember my freshman year, and I took a speech class because I thought, oh, this will be an easy A. I competed publicly in persuasive speech in high school, and I won the Pennsylvania State Championship, first place. So I pulled out that award-winning speech, and I got up in front of my freshman year class, and I nailed it, right? And my professor called me over afterwards, and he said that he would like me to change my major, that he thought that I should be in communications. Wow. And that if I changed my major, he would mentor me for the next 4 years.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
I changed my major and I went into communications. And I've had a television talk show, which is what I'm doing today. And I read the news, and I was a DJ, and, I was an actress in some television drama plays. And so I just went all in my major, and he was right. That's what I needed to be doing. But when I was reading that chapter on empowerment, that story came to mind for me. And I guess my message here is that the impression that a teacher or an educator can make doesn't need to stop at 10, right?
Oh,
or doesn't need to stop at elementary school, that it could go on. These 8 ways can be applied throughout higher education as well.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Connie, what are you going to do moving forward now that this book has been published? You're a published author. You've got, daddy-daughter books. What's next for you in terms of getting this message out?
Well, because I work in a school, it's kind of nice that I kind of have been preaching to the choir when I go to work every day, and a lot of those choir members are my friends. So I definitely, as far as getting the book out, I want to continue to share that. I have some positions of facilitation, I won't say leadership, but facilitation of other counselors, and I'd want to share that with them so that they can share that with their teachers. I think our biggest passion behind it is helping educators to be great and to really be impactful, but with intentionality, because we all get tired and things happen, and sometimes the unplanned for, as in this last year, happen, and we're left to try to get ourselves together. And so I really want it to be an encouragement and inspiration to other educators that they would leave these marks.
Yeah. So what we need to do is get the word out, right?
That's right. That's right.
What are your thoughts, Butch, on ways that others maybe that are listening to this, or that you have in terms of thoughts on how to get the word out about these 8 ways so that more people are keen to, gosh, what a difference they can make in students' lives?
Well, we're going to be proactive, Krista or Christy, in terms of contacting educator blogs or podcasts, and going straight to school districts directly to, they can't move if they don't know it's there, to make them aware of this resource. We've gotten a wonderful serendipity that has happened since we started the book release. We're getting feedback from teachers who are saying teachers should read this at the start of every school year. And we hadn't thought about it like that. So that's going to become one of our hooks, that, hey, listen, I don't care how long you've been in education. Every year before the kids show up, you got to go back to this. This has got to be your reference book for teaching life. And so, we want to get the words out. We're going to be on shows. We're going to be contacting people. If somebody wants to invite us in, either, together or separately to talk about the book, and or set up some system where some people can win some books or something. But we want to get the word out. Clearly, that's our prime objective.
Yeah, and I think that we need to ask everybody that's listening to this recording too to read it, share it. I'm going to the beach with my family this weekend, and I'm going to get a signed one for Kara Butch, but I'm going to let her borrow mine, and she's going to love it. And she's actually starting a new school in a couple of weeks. Awesome. As a 3rd grade teacher, so she'll be able to share it with her new teachers as well.
Krista, I got to tell you that there are people who are getting the book and reading it. They click on, they get the ebook, and they start reading it, and then they put in a review within about 3 or 4 hours. It's an easy read full of content. We're amazed at how quickly people are consuming it.
It's definitely a deep read.
I noticed that when I started reading it, and I got both the ebook and you delivered this to me, and I started reading the ebook, and it went like that. It was just really an easy read, which I appreciate. Right. But at the same time, I think a lot of people don't want to take in a ton of content anymore. They want, okay, what are the highlights? Give it to me. And so I liked the way that it was like, okay, here's why we're writing it. But then here's the 8 ways and a story to relate to on each of them. And then you wrapped it up nicely. I wanted to wrap up this interview by you telling a little bit more about the hill you've chosen. Is that something you want to speak about?
Yes. Connie and I both love this. Connie, do you have the book before you? You want me to read it?
I do, but you can read it, Dave.
Okay. This is the epilogue, and it's called The Hill You've Chosen. Of the thousands of career paths available to you, you have chosen the one that affects millions. As the opening quote so aptly put it, teachers make all other professions possible. You come with keen-eyed focus, stiffened spines, and hearts inclined toward significantly impacting your students. You have done the heavy lifting of qualifying yourself academically. In fact, many of you have returned to the academic well for additional buckets of graduate and postgraduate preparation. You have sharpened your skills by working with the journeyman educators who knew where the landmines were buried. You have made mistakes that made and still make you blush today. You have run interference for many who have desperately needed your intervention. You have endured rebukes from your superiors for blurring the lines of convention. Some child had a need, and your heart wouldn't let you sit quietly in face of glaring suffering. You moved, you helped, and you paid for it. You agree to rise early for school and return home late with the activities of the day still singing in your head. At times, even though you don't want to, you revisit the emotions that rattled you earlier that day. You can still see the angry tilt of your student's mother's head as she lost herself in an unreasonable rant. You couldn't wait until the close of the day, or at least until she left your room. As difficult as some days and some experiences can be, their noise was often softened and sometimes blotted out entirely by an unexpected intervention. You would hear a sweeter sound in the distance, perhaps at a supermarket. You'd hear the familiar voice of a student who had been in your class some time ago. You never realize your impact on her until she runs over to you beaming. Before you know it, she has given you a hug and is introducing you to her grandfather. Speaking to her grandfather, she squeals, "Papa, she is the best teacher ever." That's why you do what you do. That's the hill you've chosen, and we're all the better for your choice.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm crying. I love that. I read that, but it didn't sound as good until you read it. That's why you do what you do.
Yeah.
We love that too. We keep reading it. It's
Beautiful.
You know where we come from. You know, my mother was a journeyman teacher. I mean, and Connie is much like her.
Yeah.
And I mean, they come with the mission in mind, and and I've seen her mature as a teacher from the first class she had to where she is right now.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yep.
Well, and it really is a tribute to teachers and a reminder of how important their role is, and maybe sometimes just taken for granted a bit.
Absolutely.
So, that to me was a strong message, not only in that particular chapter, but throughout. And so thank you for writing it. Thank you for sharing it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Is there any final thoughts before we go?
Just nudge somebody and tell them to get over to Amazon and get, Leave a Mark by Connie S. Johnson and Rufus D. Stevens and enjoy themselves. And leave a review.
Yeah, reviews are important.
That's right.
Absolutely. And share it, right?
Absolutely. And they'll hear a lot of us. We will be making noise from here and talking about giving it as Christmas gifts and everything. It's just a remarkable read.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I look forward to sharing it with as many people as possible. I'm going to take this recording and make sure we kind of blow it up a little bit and boost it. I'll target the audience. And, I do these shows just for the fun of it. I mean, you heard I had a talk show when I was in my 20s, and I, turned 50, and I'm like, I want to have a talk show. So, I decided to do that. And I think that teacher's mark that he left on me when I was 18 is what I'm living today. So I'm all in terms of your concepts, your 8 ways. I've lived it. I think everybody has lived it. And so I'll do whatever I can to help get this message out for you all.
Thank you so much, Krista. You're
And
the
what I
best.
love, yeah, you know, it is your purpose and your passion. And it shows. It
Well,
shows
thank
in
you.
your writing.
Thank you so
Comes
much.
out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to go. Great seeing you. And
you.
we'll stay in touch on this.
Absolutely.
And let's share, let's get the message out there. And we all can leave a mark.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Krista.
Take care.
All right. Bye for now.